So we have learned
that
that the Torah that is required on this night, we're talking about the night of Shavuos, is the oral Torah, which is recited. It used to be for many years, the oral Torah was not put down into writing. It was just simply memorized.
begin the Yistuchon or the Yistabak Kachada. Two different. I'm not sure how you have it.
So that they may be purified as one. I'm not familiar with that word. Read that word again.
I think what you have is the Yistuchon.
Okay.
Like Zach, I guess.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
Mimabua de Nachla Amika.
By the spring of the deep river or stream.
Labasar Bahayoma Lese Torah Shabiksav.
Afterwards, because we're talking about the ritual, the night ritual of staying up all night, and afterwards, meaning on this day, once it's daybreak, written Torah will come and join her. And they'll be as one, as united in an intimacy above.
Then
a proclamation will go out concerning him.
As
for me, this is a verse in Isaiah. This is my covenant with them, says Hashem. My spirit that is upon you and my words that I have put in your mouth will not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your children, nor from the mouth of your children's children, says Hashem, from now and forever. So obviously a beautiful verse about the continuity of Torah, and also the idea of the transmission of the Ruach, so to speak, of the divine spirit that's imbued in the person's mouth who speaks the Torah.
Do you think that they're sort of like making this pasuk binary, like sort of two parts, like the Ruchi Asher Alecha is the Torah Shabal Peh, and the Dvarai Asher Samti B'Ficha is the Torah Shabiksav, or or it's just sort of?
Probably it's some wordplay going on there. The Kabbalists often try to divide speech into, starting even from the Sefer Yetzirah, which has a huge emphasis on speech, on the dialect of pronunciation and the different parts of the mouth that create the sounds. And then also you have this idea of speech being a combination of the way the mouth and the air that passes through the mouth are interacting, like the vocal cords and the air and all of those things combined. And it often uses kind of this metaphor of what you could say is similar to kind of the oral Torah and the written Torah, right? The oral Torah is malchut, is speech, and then the inner parts of that the oral Torah is revealing are the tiferet, so to speak, of the written Torah.
Maybe it's actually the opposite. Maybe it makes more sense that the Ruchi Asher Alecha is more the Torah Shebiksav, and the Dvarai Asher Samti Beficha is the Baal Peh, maybe?
You would think that the Ruchi would be the Torah Shebal Peh, you're saying, or the opposite?
No, that's the way I first said it, but I think now the way you're explaining it, maybe it's more the opposite. The Ruchi is like more of the you said it wasn't Malchut, you said it was
Tiferes.
And more, yeah.
Okay, maybe. Anyway, let's continue. Let's read Zev, read 2:16, please.
I think we may have covered it last time, but
Okay, we could skip it.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll skip it. We did read it last time. Therefore,
Well, do Chasidek Hadmoi lo haba noime b'Hallel, yeah?
the ancient Hasidim, right? We know that, for example, the Gemara refers to the Hasidim Rishonim, to the earlier Hasidim. It's a great historical question of who is there some group specifically they were referring to, the early pious ones. And for example, I know in Brachot, because that's what I'm teaching, so I'm a little more familiar with it right now than pretty much any other tractate. It says that Chasidim Rishonim Shoim Sha'achas. The early Hasidim would prepare for 1 hour before each tefillah. 1 hour before and 1 hour after, it comes into 9 hours. They were basically practicing some form of meditation to be able to spend that much time, to the point where the Gemara says, like, what about work? What about Torah even? And they're so preoccupied in this preparing, so to speak. Preparing also means being in a certain mental state, which is, I don't want to use the word stoic, but disattached from being perturbed by ordinary events. Basically, they were trying to create a certain level of spiritual equilibrium. It's funny because the Baal Shem Tov, but I think even before him, there's a word for equanimity, hishtavut, where hishtavut means a form that stoicism. Usually, we associate stoicism with like Greek soldiers, but stoicism in the form of being able to overcome your feelings, basically, and your both your passion and your fear, to be able to rise to like a higher level of focus on what's important. And that's what the Hasidim Rishonim were trying to do, apparently, based on my
Can I just ask, historically, Rabbi, right?
Yeah.
Isn't this almost a clue to putting the word Hasidim in here? That obviously there's Hasidim in, the followers of the Baal Shem Tov who passed away in 1760. Then there was the Rishonim Hasidim, who you're referring to, with the German Hasidim back.
No, this is before that. This is
that's what I'm saying. This is Hasidim going back to Tanaic times.
Yeah, even earlier, because already in the time of the Tanaim, they refer to them as Rishonim.
Oh,
So we don't even know, historically, we don't really know what that means, like how early that was.
Is there a name associated with this original Hasidim?
Like some other name?
No, is there a personage associated with it?
Not to my knowledge, I mean, I never looked into, it's a good question. I never looked into it. So it's not like I can say, yeah, this is a good question, and I read all about it, and I still don't know. It's a good question. I didn't read anything about it, but without looking into it specifically, I still never came across, like, by the way, meaning we do find certain people that it says they're a chassid in the Gemara, but that doesn't mean they were from the Hasidim Rishonim, because a chassid is like a reoccurring word, or like a tzaddik, just like we don't identify the word tzaddik with any particular time in history, even though we could say, a lot of people like to say that the Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhensk, invented or reinvented tzaddikism, the focus on the tzaddik. So does that mean that he was the first tzaddik? No, obviously not. But he was somebody who wrote a lot and exemplified the value of a tzaddik. But there's the idea of a tzaddik is perpetually within the Jewish world. Chassid, not quite as much as a tzaddik, but very close. So the word don't get too caught up in the word because the word keeps on reoccurring. And then it sometimes is a specific group or a specific person, just like a specific,
Was that a haunted house?
you know, a
Well,
particular.
yeah, so you know it goes back as far as the men of the Great Assembly, because you've got Al Hasidim, Al Hasidim, Al Hasidim.
Yeah, yeah. So it goes back. It definitely goes back. Yeah. Okay. Although, even though the Gemara says that it's not really clear exactly the wording of all the words of the Amidah. It's claimed that come from the men of the Great Assembly. Does that mean literally all the words or just the general themes? And then the words and the specific words were put in later, which it's open for discussion. But let's go back to the text, right?
V'lo an baraisa.
So they didn't sleep at night. They would delve into the Torah, saying,
V'emrei nesi lachsani Yerusa kadisha lan v'levnan b'srei omen.
"Let us come to obtain a holy inheritance for ourselves and our children in two worlds," meaning this world and the Olam Haba.
V'hu le'elia knesses Yisrael isatra olahu.
On that night, the Knesset Yisrael, the gathering of Israel, or what he calls the assembly of Israel, is crowned above
V'asyel is davga b'malka.
and comes to be intimate with the king.
V'sarvayu misatre al reishayu di'inun dezakon lahachi.
And both are crowned above the heads of those who attain this. Okay, go ahead, Zev, please, and read note 217.
Both in this world and in the world that is coming. Those are the two worlds. Shekhinah, known as Assembly of Israel, is crowned above, and devotees engaged in studying Torah. What? And above the devotees engaged studying the oral Torah, and she comes to unite with King Tiferes.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Well, he finished. Did you hear the note, Avi?
I'm just saying, I hear interruption of some sort of like paper or something.
Okay. Yeah, if somebody is moving some paper away, put yourself on mute.
Thank you.
Okay. Rabbi Shimon.
Shimon hachi amar b'shata demiskan shechavraya b'halel yelagabe.
Speak as follows, and the companions gathered around him on this night.
Nesi l'saknu tachshite kala.
Let us come and array the jewels of the bride,
Begin as hishtakach l'mocher betachshitoha
so that
v'sikunaha.
tomorrow she will appear before the king fittingly bedecked and adorned. I just want to say something about this. This is the power of Kabbalah. Really, it's the power of all religion, of all Judaism, and all of Kabbalah and all Hasidus, is this idea of Rabbi Shimon would speak when the companions gathered around him. Let's do this amazing thing. Let's get God ready, so to speak, to meet with the Shekhinah, the divine groom and the divine bride. We can actually facilitate the divine wedding. The idea of having, a rabbi surrounded by his students, Rabbi Shimon and his son and his students, to be able to say that is a key thing of what a Kabbalah circle is about. Okay, it's about, I don't like to use the word spiritual elite, but it's basically saying, most Jews, they're just doing whatever they're doing, even if they're following the halacha, but we actually have a chance to affect the real goal of it all that most people are not even aware of. Like we're gonna actually make this unity. We're gonna make the wedding. We're gonna be responsible for the wedding between Shekhinah and the Holy One, blessed be He. That's just kind of a little note that will then, you'll find people writing like one of the themes of different people writing about the Ari and then the Baal Shem and then the Maggid is that they're all trying to recreate this fellowship that Rabbi Shimon describes in the Zohar. I find a lot of ink spilled on that. To me, it's kind of cute because it's almost like you don't have to write it. It's like everyone, you don't have to write a book on what everyone knows, but okay, fine, go ahead, knock yourself out. And they try to compare all the different ways that in the Zohar that describe the different things they did and how the Ari was doing the same thing with his group and so on. But you'll notice that you don't have to be a world-class Zohar scholar or scholar of Hasidism to kind of see that common link. It may not even be just a literary link. It may just be at the core of what these kind of, not just Jewish esoteric movements, but esoteric movements in general.
Is
Okay.
there an element here of Reb Shimon's basically saying you should recognize that academia is the action? It's not in order to do other action. Like the academia, the study, the intellectual.
What you're pointing out, actually, Ben, is that Maimonides and many other philosophers have a very similar thing. Like there's there's the, I don't know what word they would use, the plebeians or whatever time, like there's just the amcha, the people who just go about their ways, even if they are observant of the laws, they're really unaware of the goal. So they serve some purpose in their fulfillment of the mitzvot, but not knowing the true goal of religion, which in Maimonides' view was to some degree a certain philosophical outlook that would be obtained, that had to be obtained through the mind, not just deeds. There was a similar idea, like, there's you need to achieve the goal, and the goal is either philosophical or spiritual or internal. It may also take effect in the world around you, but it's not enough to just be an observant Jew. So yeah, I'd say they have that in common in their own ways, which is another thing. If you read Shalom likes to think that the Zohar is in conversation with Maimonides' Guide to the Perplexed, both as an original inspiration and then disgusted with it and reacting to it. That's one of Shalom's early theories of kind of the motive of the Zohar, of what drew out. I'm not buying into that, but I'm just commenting on like why somebody like Shalom would even make a comment like that. Because you do see, again, there are these common themes, and I'm not a scholar, I'm not a historian, I'm more like a person who is looking for kind of archetypal theories that are just keep coming around again and again and again. We could put them in a historical context if that's very important to you, and history is interesting, is definitely fascinating. But part of this is just simply, here's an idea, see how it like resurfaces like a million times in a million places. It's different in many ways, and you could try to track it and write extensively about it. But here's an idea that you're going to find in it's like embedded in the psyche, like, gathering a group of people together and saying, we have an opportunity to like do something different. There's like, you'll hear some American patriots saying, there's a well-meaning Americans, but they don't know what they're doing. We're going to save this country. Like there's that theme is kind of a common theme throughout history. So it's not even just within, people who like say the Baal Shem Tov followed the Ari, who followed the Zohar. I'm like, yeah. And we're all like, this is just, it's so ingrained in the human condition that I don't know that it's following. You know what I mean? Like, we're always convinced that one thing is following the other. It may follow it historically speaking, but I'm not convinced that they're following. I think it's emanating what's just innate in people. Anyway, that's part of a broader conversation of my theory that Judaism doesn't really believe in history. And I don't mean that quite literally. I say it in such a strong way. I don't mean it, but the point is that in the Talmud also, I mean, there was a point I tried to want to reconcile Talmudic timelines for like Second Temple period with historical timelines. I don't even care because I don't believe that Judaism believes in time the way we do. I just don't. I think I know they really do believe in time in a physics level in terms of when Rosh Chodesh is, and when Shabbos is, and when Nisan is, and what year it is. But at the same time, there's a lot of other. There's a real contradiction in Judaism about the nature of time. One is strict adherence to time on every level, from physics to history, and another is truly beyond time. And the reoccurring themes. Pesach is not really about getting out of Egypt because we already celebrated it before. Because the theme of Pesach is just there in it's eternal. It manifests historically on the date of Yetziat Mitzrayim. But it's not really about that day in history. It's really about an eternal process of becoming free from your limits, whatever they are. So that's another way. And you'll find that kind of parallel way, even not just in Kabbalah, but also in Gemara, also a lot, in a little bit of a different way, but you'll find it quite often in the Gemara. All the Midrashim that say that, for example, I just learned a Gemara about Adam, that, wherever Adam wanted to be settled, that was settled. I mean, come on. On a historical level, you're talking about Adam as like being the settler who settled the world, and anything he didn't decide, if he didn't think about America being settled, if he didn't say, I want to settle that continent, it would still be a barren wasteland up until today. What that means, clearly, is that there's no history. It doesn't mean that Adam, it means everything that will be already was and still is. That's what it means to me. That's what it means to me. Okay, let's go on. You want to read the note, Zev?
Yeah. Let us come and array the jewels of the bride. The various elements of Torah become jewels adorning Shekhinah, preparing her for union with Tiferes. See Shir Hashir and Rabbah on 4:11 in the name of Shimon, son of Lachish. Just as a bride is adorned with 24 ornaments and lacking one of them, she is considered worthless. So a disciple must be fluent in 24 books of the Bible. Lacking in one of them, he is worthless.
Yeah, but let's take a moment to talk about the 24. A bride would, I'm not an expert in bridal wear, but between necklace, earrings, chokers, I don't know, I'm not going to start describing women's jewelry, and then the various ornaments, so to speak, that are part of the bridal dress and headpiece, crown, whatever it is that they used to wear in ancient times. That's represent all of those, like, things are represented by the 24 books of the Torah. The Torah, the person, when they're studying Torah, is preparing them. They're preparing the bride. They're preparing an ornament on the bride, a beautification of the bride, so that the groom is the Holy One, blessed be He, Tiferet, will unite with the bride. So that's a key part of all of Kabbalah, and particularly this piece of Kabbalah, when more than almost any other part of the Zohar, it describes the men being kind of like the bridal entourage who are getting ready, that giving the bride, braiding the bride's hair, whatever it is that they do, making, getting her jewelry in order, her clothing in order, so that she's, it's a very feminine thing. Okay, let's go on.
But that's not a typical role for men, though.
No, in fact, there's this bothered somebody so much that he wrote kind of a semi-academic, trashing Judaism for being a feminine religion. That it emasculates the men.
Bite your tongue.
What?
Bite your tongue.
Yeah, I hear you. But they had plenty of material. They didn't have to make anything up. You know what I mean? They had plenty of material to quote like this, where the rabbis are describing God as the male and the Shekhinah, the divine presence, which is the assembly of Israel, as the female, which would mean that we are like female. So there's so much of that it's surprising that it took till, I don't know what, 1980 for somebody to come up with like a book on that. I understand it as a little bit more well-rounded in terms of gender, that it's not, that we understand that it's not, first of all, it's not about sexuality in a simple way, and it's about a certain bondedness of the soul, that perhaps that's a metaphor that we use that word, but it's something that's entirely different at the same time, but still the best metaphor there is. So there's going to be bound to be these kind of people oversimplifying it, which is part of a bigger conversation of when the mashal really becomes why sometimes the mashal and the nimshal are completely one, which means the parable and that which it's illustrating really are one and the same thing, would mean like when in a beautiful, loving relationship of two Kabbalists, where you, let's say, have a husband and wife that are both Kabbalists, and they embark on embodying kind of these themes in their relationship, then the physical element of intimacy and the spiritual element of the Holy One, blessed be, and the Shekhinah could become, not exact parallels, but they could become very close. But most of the time, that's not what we're really talking about. We're not really talking about a husband and wife practicing these Kabbalistic kind of understandings of the nature of spiritual intimacy in their own personal life. We're talking about a Torah, somebody studying Torah. We're talking about somebody davening. But there's a certain element of spiritual intimacy that we're talking about. We use those same words of intimacy, but it doesn't mean the same thing. Does that make one feminine? It doesn't. They're not envisioning God. God has never been a giant man in the sky for the Kabbalists. The Sefirot, even though we understand there's an embodied part of the Sefirot, we don't limit it to that in any way. Okay, let's go on.
Can I just toss in something here for a sec?
Sure.
Okay, but it's so much when I was talking to congregants about the Shekhinah, they would just say, no, the Shekhinah's God. Shekhinah's not feminine, because they're really they really have this idea God is masculine, and there cannot be a feminine quality to God, just like there can't be, for instance, this since we're talking about Shavuot, the idea of giving the Torah at Sinai. One of the issues that comes up with that is, okay, so there's God and there's Israel, and the Torah is the ketubah. So who's marrying who? What role does one have? My God, there has to be. Well, Israel's not feminine. It can't be feminine. That kind of, it's a problem when there's this inability to see the possibility within not only us as individuals, but God having any qualities that are feminine.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we are all told that we're all made up of part male and part female within us anyway, right? And
Correct.
so on that basis alone, right? That I mean, it's tough for me to admit it, but I probably have some certain female or effeminate traits within my manliness, and vice versa. And and maybe a lot of guys can't get it, but that's just sort of machismo clouding their understanding of the concept.
Right.
Can I set something up here?
Mhm.
We need to maintain confidentiality of anything any of us say in this group.
Oh, wait, David, we're being recorded.
Okay. Uh-huh.
What I'll
I
do
was
is.
just trying to protect David and revealing his truth.
Okay.
So let me add a question. Oh, I interrupted you. Yes, why don't you go?
But
No,
let me
go
just
ahead.
say,
Go ahead.
what I'll do is I'll take us off being recorded towards the end. So whatever we want to say, we can do then.
Rabbi, you can broadcast it in synagogue if you want.
No, David, I think that's great. I think people are going to love that about you. Like, look how sensitive this guy is.
What I was going to say is that how I perceive it is, yeah, of course we all have masculine and feminine energies, but the Shekinah and Tiferet, masculine and feminine energies, is still at a very dualistic level for our religion. It's when they combine. It's when they combine into, I believe, Ein Sof or the eternal, that it goes into non-dualism, which is the ultimate level we want to reach.
But that's what the Kagavna prayer, which is also from the Zohar, that you recite on Friday night as part of the
Yes.
the Nusa Safard that we use.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question. Do we want to, are we ready to go beyond like the duality of gender amongst other dualities of mind and body, oral Torah and written Torah. There's all these different kind of polarities that we're talking about, and it's a good question. Once in a while, I understand what it is to be a misnagid. When I read some innovative thinker, and I'm like, no, that guy, it's not how we see things. So there's this Kabbalah scholar named I think his name is Itamar Schwartz, and I'm going to be honest with you, everyone's falling in love with him because he seems to be an innovative thinker. But I studied him, and I'm like, I was super impressed in the beginning, and then I said, I don't agree with him. He basically is really working hard on taking out what David's calling the dualism, and showing that there's no real, all of this kind of discussion of Shekhinah and Kuchabrichu, it's all like it's a false dichotomy, and we gotta like focus on the Ein Sof. Everything's Ein Sof. It's always the Ein Sof. And there's something that just bothers me about it. And it's, of course, we know it's all the Ein Sof, but like you don't have to talk about it all. You don't have to undo the layers that are part and parcel of our tradition. It's interesting because the Lubavitch Rebbe also did that. He did it a little bit differently. And maybe I'm biased. Maybe it's because I spent so many years in Chabad, and that's just what I'm used to. I'm okay with the Chabad version of it. I'm not okay with Itamar Schwartz's version of it. And then sure enough, I met him in person, and it was the biggest letdown, one of the biggest letdowns I've ever had, because he gave the worst advice I'd ever seen. Maybe he was right, but from my perspective, it was terrible advice. And I'm not here to say Lashon Hara about it. I'm just like, sometimes our tradition allows for, just like I said, it allows for a contradictory, and perhaps somebody will want to look into it more, how it's not really a contradiction, but on face value, a contradictory version of time, of whether time is real or not. It may also very well hold discrepancies in terms of whether the duality is an important part of our tradition, or really ultimately it's just a waiting room till we could expand our consciousness. And David and Itamar Schwartz, both great scholars, and there are Itamar Schwartz, by the way, David, I don't think I'm putting him down as a nobody. He's considered one of the greatest Kabbalah scholars alive today. I just don't agree with him because I think he's too quick to do away with our dualities. I'm holding on to my dualities.
I love it.
Isn't there this concept in Song of Songs, Rabbi, about the it's like the waltz, or is that the whole concept of oneness is this almost like this this dance between opposites?
Yeah, but you make a good point that we do have such a tradition of love, which is masculine, feminine, which is, mind, body. It used to be, and nowadays a lot of people don't like that either, because they don't like the whole idea of different genders needing to represent a relationship with God. What about people who don't fit into that paradigm? I understand all that. Maybe I don't understand it on the level that the people who are bothered by it. But I will say one thing, David, in terms of your observation. I think it's very true that the Song of Songs, which is supposedly plays an oversized role in the ideas of the Zohar, I think that to try to kind of do that part out of Judaism, I don't know. I mean, it's yeah, sure, there are parts that are non-dual, that are beyond gender. I got that, but to take away that rich tapestry, to me, is to rip out the curtains, the walls, and I don't even know if you're left with the foundation. I'm not sure. So for me, it's a delicate thing. It's hard for me to say I'm a misnagid to a Kabbalist. I feel like give the guy a chance, but actually I could say I don't agree with a lot of his things. They just rub me the wrong way, and he's allowed to say them, but I don't agree with them, and I think that most people don't even understand what's being undone because they're not
Right.
smart enough.
Right.
Okay, that's
Haven't
fine.
reached it yet, right?
Or maybe they're just smarter than me. Maybe they're like, maybe they know something I don't know.
Bite your tongue.
I don't know.
Can I say something? Shlomo had it so exact. He said his essential teaching was, what do we know? All we're doing is living in a conversation of duality. You couldn't possibly live in non-duality for long. It's something that you reach and then you come back to duality, and you reach out for it and
I
come
like
back.
that. I like that model better, David.
Yes.
In other words,
Yeah,
I
that's
like
how I live.
if you want to read, we had a little advertisement about Moshe Edel's book that Rabbi Yossi was sharing with us about rupture. Let's see, did he type did you write it down? Yeah, vocal
Not
rights
yet.
and broken theologies. Another book about the Baal Shem Tov is a book by Emmanuel Etkes. I believe I really like it. It's not saying such big, innovative ideas. That's part of the reason why I like it. And one of his claims is everybody runs around saying that Baal Shem Tov taught this idea of dveikut, of this kind of divine unity that you could. The theory being that every man somehow could tap into the oneness of God and get beyond the duality. And his theory is that the Baal Shem Tov, in fact, did teach that, but taught it in a way that you would be able to access that oneness and then go back into your regular state. It wasn't that you tapped into that and you reached nirvana, you never returned back to the state of separation. It was a state he helped his followers attain, but for a little while.
Right.
And then they would always go back. And he, again, you could argue with that point is that he was teaching them how to go beyond that completely.
Isn't that the point of the word devekus, which means to cleave? And to cleave is one of those words in English that means its opposite. So you can have, I can cleave to you as my teacher, Rabbi, but
Yeah.
cleaving is also the act of splitting apart.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's a famous debate about, I think, between Shalom and I'm trying to remember who argued with him about, Shalom didn't believe that you could that you could become one with God as a Jewish thing, and I don't remember it was Buber or whoever argued with him, and
Yeah, isn't it exactly, if you say dvekus, right? Like devik is glue, right? So you're taking two things that are
Yeah.
different and sticking them
Yeah.
together. So it's still like, even when we
Yeah.
say the word non-dual, we're still saying dual. It's like a one in reference to the possibility of two, but we're rejecting the two. So it's like,
okay. Yeah. Okay, good. So we're having a broad-ranging conversation about gender.
Just one last thing about that. Adele says in this book that
Yeah.
the Baal Shem Tov didn't have. It's one of the things about why it's broken theologies. He
Mhm.
didn't have a theology. He took parts and it developed over his career. So one of the things he points out that is some of the major students of his who studied with him when he was not an elderly man, and then who met him when he was an extremely elderly man for his age, he said different things, and people say, well, wait a minute, how could that be? Well, he developed over his career in his thought, and it wasn't one thought that continued all through his career. It developed and changed over his career.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I am somewhat familiar with Edel's view on the Baal Shem Tov. I've heard him talk about these different stages in the Baal Shem Tov. I don't agree with him on a lot of it because I think a lot of it is what he does is he sets up like a straw man argument where he says, if God is in everything, how come Baal Shem Tov says God is in speech? Like God is everywhere. Like I'm like, yeah, God is everywhere, but he's giving you a mechanism of speech to have a particular type of dveikut with. He creates these kind of non-existent contradictions in the Baal Shem Tov's teachings and then reconciles them by breaking them down into stages. I love Moshe Edel. He's one of my, I guess, teachers. I don't know if teacher is the word is, but somebody I respect his work, but that one I didn't buy into yet. But let me take a look at the book and I'll tell you what I think. I didn't read the book.
What's it called?
It's in the notes. It's Vocal Rights and Broken Theologies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a Zoom group chat. If somebody wants to shoot a message about whatever, anything that's semi-relevant, you can use that. Okay, let's go on. Happy is the share of the companions when the king inquires of Matronisa, that's the queen, who has arranged her jewels, illumined her crowns, and placed her adornments. There is no one in the world who knows how to arrange the jewels of the bride other than the companions. Again, that's getting back to the point we said before, like they're the only ones in the world who can do this, the companions of Rabbi Shimon. Happy is their share in this world and in the world that is coming. Okay, let's continue. You ready?
Who are the
Matt?
companions supposed to be?
The Rabbi Shimon and his students.
Okay.
So he's claiming this unique place in the world. Again, the idea of a rabbi telling his followers that we have this unique ability in the world, like I said, classic. I don't see that as being like some rare thing. I think that's the rule, not the exception. So, you know. Comment C.
Tachazeh, Chavraya Misakna B'Hallel
On this night, the
Yatafshitalacha.
companions array the jewels of the bride and adorn
I'm
her
not
with
gonna be
crowns
sure,
for the
like,
king.
Uman Maskan Leil Malka B'Hallel
Yeah, keep going.
Lishtaka B'Kala,
But okay,
Lizdavka B'Matronisa. Do you not have that?
go on.
Okay, Nara Kadisha Amika the Kol Nara and Ima
Okay, okay. So let me catch up with you. But who prepares the king on this night? As we know that we're preparing the queen, Rabbi Shimon and his student. I told you, Rabbi Shimon is the bridal party. Rabbi Shimon and his students are part of the bridal party, getting the collar ready. What about the king? Who gets him ready to be with the bride, to couple with the matronita? So the answer is the mother, the holy river, deepest of all rivers, supernal mother. That's Bina. As it is written, O daughter, and gaze upon King Solomon, upon the crown which his mother crowned him on the day of his weddings. After she has prepared the king and crowned him, she comes to purify Matronisa and those who accompany her. In other words, I guess they would have like a little party going to the mikveh or equivalent of that, right? And she would accompany her future daughter-in-law to that place to be purified, along with the Chavraya Kadisha, the Holy Assembly of Reb Shimon and his students. Okay, go ahead and read 219. Sev.
Prepares and adorns Tiferes for his wedding with Shechina, known as Matronita, on the next day. This role is played by the Divine Mother, Bina, on the verse in Song of Songs, see above.
Okay, we continue. This
What does
may be
matronika
compared-
mean in Hebrew?
What's that?
What does matronika mean in Hebrew?
Matronita means the queen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's like from Latin, like matron, right?
Like the matron, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. This may be compared to a
Very
king.
Christian, isn't it?
What's that?
I just said that to annoy you. I said it's very Christian, the concept of matronita. It's
Well, it's Christian, but probably also Roman, and Rome became very Christian. So it may be compared to a king who had an only son, whom he was about to marry off to a noble lady. What did the mother do? All night long she spent in her treasure chamber and brought out a magnificent crown set with 70 precious stones and crowned him. She brought out royal garments and dressed him, adorning him like a king. Okay, go ahead, read. So let's just recap this little paragraph.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
After she had prepared the king, to say that Bina prepares the king means that the king is not prepared. How can the king be not prepared? He's the king.
Because the whole idea of a wedding is to get ready for the wedding. Like,
But we're
why do
talking
we
about
get,
God
like,
here.
let me ask you, let me turn the question on you. Like, why do you need to have a wedding?
I don't.
unification. Unification.
I agree with you. I don't need that.
It's a unification.
Okay, thank you. Good answer.
So one answer would be, you know why you need a wedding? You're a lawyer. A wedding creates a new legal entity of a couple that didn't exist as a couple, as a married couple before the wedding,
Okay.
right?
That doesn't answer the question. Why does God in any way need to be prepared?
stay with me for a minute. So you could go to the county judge and get him to do whatever it is, right? You can go to City Hall and get a wedding thing. But people bring along all their families and their friends because they're bringing together two people who come from their own places with their own family and friends, right? You still with me, David?
Yeah.
So you do the wedding because you know how hard it is to be married. So you're bringing everyone along with you to say, like, I want my parents and my siblings to meet your parents and your siblings and the whole deal. It's a merger. So in Judaism, we believe that even though there's one God, we're still really having the same argument.
Yeah, we're back down to dualism. That's not a problem for me.
We're exactly there. So, but this is a great illustration, and you're not wrong. You know what I mean? You're not wrong on some level. Like there's this idea that even the angels have to ask permission of one another to praise God. It doesn't make any sense. They should all know that God is worthy of praise. They don't need to ask permission from one another, right? Unless they're in a relationship to one another. So if you go out of turn, it's like you cut to the front of the line. Everyone is going to get their food, but you just have to wait your turn, even spiritually, to praise God. So that's because this idea of they're in a relationship with one another, and they have to take that into account, even in their relationship to God. So God is in a relationship with Shekhinah, but he has to get ready. He's not just overpowering Shekhinah. He's coming in to Shekhinah in love. So he has to get ready for what does Shekhinah want? What is Shekhinah going to see in him that makes him even more beautiful? Now, you're right. God can't be even more beautiful than he is, except in the Zohar.
I mean, they accepted it as a beautiful image, and I think that's how it's meant.
Now, you're right, David. If you were to ask, is the Zohar actually an image that you could make an idol out of because it's not really true? Yes, the answer would be yes. Which is the point where I think like you and that other rabbi, this new famous, the most famous Kabbalist today, are saying, you know, like, let's not get caught up in this dualistic image because really God is one. There's no need for God to prepare himself to be with the divine, with us. Isn't it, you know, but this is this is our story of God.
Yeah. No, I got it. I accept it.
We all believe in Ein Sof, but the thing is, the problem with Ein Sof is that it's a little bit distant from us. So that's what I like about the Lubavitcher Rebbe's version of Ein Sof or the Keter, is that it's always like trying to figure, like show, like amplify our current situation and expand it into Keter consciousness in a way that doesn't just blow it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't the word prepared be used in a different sense, not in terms of the object, which is God, but rather those people who are doing the preparing by
Correct.
getting
All of
themselves
this is about
set up.
our relationship with God, Ted.
So it's inner work, it's inner preparation within
Correct.
for God who doesn't need it.
Correct.
So what you're referring to, Naftali, is the dut, right? The dut is the keter, basically coming a little bit into closer to our realm.
Dot is some interchangeable with keter in the sense that it's in between, like Chachman Bina, higher than the midot, but on the other hand, it is lower than Chachman Bina, not above it. It's more coming through the intellect than transcending it, and helping us relate to the idea. Like it's the link between our mind and our hearts. Yeah. So the other thing is, Ted mentioned that maybe like the word is prepare, but maybe we're over focusing on prepare. And there's another word, which is just tikkun. Tikkun means the preparation or the beautification, which means what can we do for the Holy One, blessed be He? How do we help the Holy One? Because all of the Zohar is like, what can we do for this level of divineness?
That was my point. Just what
Yeah, I'm amplifying it back at you. I'm saying you're right. There are other ways of reading it, like what you said, that would fit into the words even. Okay. We just translate it slightly differently.
Great. Great passage.
Page, what?
Great passage, really opening up our minds and our hearts.
Yeah. Page 130. Afterwards, she entered the bride's home and saw her maidens arranging her crowns, garments, and jewelry to prepare her. But remember who the maidens are. The maidens before were this Rabbi Shimon and his followers, the Chevra. She said to them, look. Now at this point, right, she's joined not just by the Chevra, but also by her mother-in-law, right, Bina. Look, I have prepared a bathing house, a place of flowing waters surrounded by aromatic scents to purify my daughter-in-law. Let her come, my son's queen, Matronita, along with her maidens, to purify themselves in the place that I have prepared in my bathing house of flowing waters. Let's hope that rabbi didn't read this passage about mikvahs. Okay. Afterward, bedeck her with her jewels, dress her in her garments, adorn her with her crowns. Tomorrow, the day of Shavuot, when my son comes to unite with the queen, he'll prepare a place for all, and his abode will be amongst you together. Go ahead, Zev, with 221, please.
My son's Matronita, his bride, his noble lady. See the preceding note. The preceding note just says that it comes from Latin, as we discussed.
So it is.
Why does she call him son? She's not the mother of God. It's getting into weird stuff here, isn't it?
Well, I think that was.
Or is it just the image of the woman, the noble lady, all night spending in her treasure chamber?
No, this is the wife. You're right, David. The king has a mother. The
Tell us
mother
about that.
This is part of the beauty of the Zohar. As when we are receiving the Torah, what that really means is we are the Kala, we're the bride. We're united with Shekhinah, and then the Holy One, blessed be He, unites with Shekhinah, with his mother looking on and making sure that it happens.
Isn't that Bina?
It is Bina. The mother is Bina. Yeah.
Right.
Surely another way of looking at it, Rabbi, is it's almost like looking at God as the father-in-law, both God as the father-in-law and God as, in the form of the Shekhinah, right? And Moses, in this case, being the bridegroom, and it's Moses who achieves the unification with heaven by going up the mountain.
So, for example,
and that's why you have Yithro. That's why you have Yithro.
Yeah.
It's in Parshas Yithro, because Yithro comes and Yithro arrives, and the metaphor for Yithro being the father-in-law is that God is also coming.
Mm-hmm. So the Zohar does get very specific about Moses, and in many terms talks about him being either the lower part, so to speak, of Tiferet. That's why he's often referred to as Netzach. Mm-hmm. So he's an element of Tiferet, and therefore he's like part of the divine masculine, and in relationship with Shekhinah. But then again, he also can sometimes be seen as the receiver, because the receiver becomes the giver becomes the receiver. It's not like, again, once you get into this gender bender in terms of it's just giving versus receiving. It's not being actual male versus actual female, you know. And even on the Sephirotic tree, there's fluidity, so you can go up and down the tree. But yes, to some degree, yes, about Moses. Moses is like the husband,
The son-in-law, yeah.
the husband of the Shekhinah, but the husband is not the highest. The husband has a father-in-law, and that's a metaphor that I think we actually learned together from the Zohar and Parshat Ba'era. So it is.
Malka Kadisha Matronisa V'Chavraya Kahagavna.
With the Holy King Matronita and the companions.
Ve'ima Yilad Mitaknas Kola.
And Supernal Mother who arranges all.
Ishtakach
Thereby, the Supernal King Matronita and the companions dwell together, never separating. God will abide in your tent. It's a question. Like, who will, I'm sorry, not God. Yeah, God, who will abide in your tent? Question. He who walks blameless, ufal tzedek, and does righteousness. So, who is that? Those who array the bride in her jewels, in her garments, in her crowns. Each one is called Poel Tzedek, one who activates righteousness. What a great word, an activator of righteousness. Okay, go ahead with note 222.
Companions adorn Shekhinah by studying Torah through the night of Shavuot, while Bina prepares her royal son Tiferes. Shekhinah is known as Tzedek, righteousness, and each person who arrays her by engaging in Torah becomes a Poel Tzedek, one who activates righteousness, enabling Shekhinah to unite with her beloved. See Moshe de Leon, Sefer Harimon. The context in Psalms reads, Hashem, who will abide in your tent, who will dwell on your holy mountain, he who walks blameless, Poel Tzedek, and does righteousness, and speaks the truth in his heart.
Okay. Rab Chia said, if I am privileged in the world just to hear these words, it is enough. Dayenu, right? For me. Happy is the share of those who engage in Torah and know the way of the Holy King, and whose desire is for Torah. Of them it is written, because he desires me, I will deliver him, and I will rescue him and honor him. Psalms 9, 14, 15. Go ahead, read 223.
Similar exclamations appear in rabbinic literature and often in the Zohar. See Talmud Brachos, Shabbos, Pesikta de Rav Kahana, Shir Hashirim Rabbah, Kohelas Rabbah, Kohelas Zuta, elsewhere in the Zohar. The context in Psalms reads, because he desires me, I will deliver him. I will raise him high, for he knows my name. He calls me, and I answer him. I am with him in distress. I will rescue him and honor him. On Torah as God's name, see an above note.
Great. So even though this is in the broader context of Pesach and a little bit of we just did Shavuos and mentions already Sukkot, and now it's going to go back to Rosh Hashanah. It's a beautiful standalone piece on what we do when we do Tikkun Leil Shavuot. He mentions in the note that the Zohar and other places describes a little bit some of the suggested readings. And I think many Hasidim, for many years, I followed kind of what was supposedly based on the Ari's recommendations of what should be read. He says the Ramak gives a recommendation of a cocktail of an outline almost of selected beginning and ends of many parts of Torah, especially heavy in Torah Shebaal Peh, in the written Torah, because that's the focus on the night. And it's a really beautiful metaphor. It's a beautiful, so as Reb Chia said, if he would have only been around just for this, it would have been worth it. I'm going to take us off of Facebook so we could continue without being on